Hey there, guys. Welcome to the Schiz and Giggles podcast. My name's Kody. I have schizophrenia.
And I'm Kit, and I have schizoaffective disorder.
And today we're going to be talking about something that I'm super passionate about, and that is peer support. This is something that, if you follow me, I've talked about for years. Me and Kit were having a conversation about peer support and what it's like for us, not only as, people with severe mental illness, but as people in recovery as well. So, Kit, I want you to start by sharing a little bit about your own personal experience with peer support and how that's helped you over the years.
So, peer support for me has come across as a network of friends that I'm able to rely on. I didn't necessarily find friends through a treatment program or any kind of meeting. I met them through my hobbies and I met them through school. So, I have friends that I've known since college. We've been friends since 2017. And I've known them for a really long time, and they accept me for who I am. And then I met friends through hobbies, specifically cosplay. So I have friends in the cosplay community, and they've been able to support me through all of what happens to me. So that's really helpful.
I love that. And we're going to actually go into talking about some green flags for peers. But what I love about your journey, and we kind of talked about this, was having people outside of the mental health space is, I think, huge. And it's also probably less common, right? Because you talk to other peers and patients and people living with schizophrenia. I get this question all the time about like rebuilding friendships and making friends and stuff like that. And I hear a lot that people struggle to make friends outside of like regular traditional peer support groups. So that's got to be like really validating to have like friendships outside of just our advocacy space too.
Yeah, it's definitely it's something that is really valuable to me that I didn't realize was valuable until I really went through the depths of my illness and realized what I had was good people. And that's definitely something that's going to stick with me, and I know how valuable that is, and I wish anyone with a mental illness could have it.
Yeah, I actually did go through like a more traditional peer support and like finding my peers through groups. So when I was diagnosed with schizophrenia in 2015, one of the things that I started doing was isolating myself, right? And this is something that we hear a lot from individuals living with schizophrenia spectrum disorders is that it's very common to want to isolate. It's embarrassing to have a serious diagnosis, to take medication, all of these things. And I'm aware of that because I went through it myself. But I think the important thing for me was finding out that there were other people living with my diagnosis and not just living, but really thriving. Like they had jobs and they were driving cars and they were doing all these things that I didn't know were possible. So when I first went into a peer support group meeting, I remember being like, oh my God, these people are crazy. I am nothing like these people. And I talk about that a lot because I feel really bad now. And like the more I attended peer support, the more I realized like no one could understand me better than the people that I met through those groups, through my in person peer support groups and online peer support groups. I did my peer support groups through NAMI, which is the National Alliance for Mental Illness. But I do want people to know like there's a ton of other groups out there. There's even like online Facebook peer support groups. There's all sorts of stuff. So definitely look around. There's even like illness specific support groups. I've seen psychosis support groups and stuff like that in the past. So definitely check all that out. I did eventually, after peer support, start making friends outside of those groups, but I don't think I would have been able to do it had I not gained the confidence to like really understand my diagnosis and meet people who were struggling and had friendships and had, people they could trust outside of peer support. And once I did that, I started making friends at jobs and I started making friends when I traveled. And then eventually through online advocacy, like that's how I met you and Michelle Hammer, Gabe Howard, all the people that, I mentioned constantly on this show. But for me, I think advocacy is what allowed me to start building and maintaining healthy relationships again. How was it for you initially? Because I know you have friends outside of like traditional peer support group, but like for me, I struggled because I was really dealing a lot with like learning to explain how I was feeling and learning to speak normally again. Like I had a lot of issues. So that was embarrassing. How quickly did you like meet these people? And like I know you said some of them were friends with you before your diagnosis, but like how did that all like fold out for you?
I would say my current friend group started when I was in college and I had just come back from the Philippines with a medical mission trip with Operation Smile. And it was a very stressful time for me. And so I landed myself in a bipolar mixed episode, basically. And I remember that I had a friend that I met before that, and she introduced me to her friend group. And I was still actively having symptoms, and they all thought I was pretty cool. And I was like, okay, all right. And I was like laughing and then crying and then laughing again, going back and forth, back and forth. And they still thought I was cool. And then I got better. Like, I got a medication that helped treat the symptoms. And then I got better. And I was able to keep those friends. And I kept those friends. And then I had my psychotic break, and they were still there when I came back, which was wild to me. But I think a lot of that came from the fact that when I was having my psychotic break, I was isolating. So I wasn't really talking to anybody. And I mean, I had friends that thought that I wouldn't make it out of New York City for sure. But
Yeah.
yeah, but they were there when I came back. And then I would say a lot of my cosplay friends, I did know them, yes, before I had my psychotic break, but afterwards I still met new people. And the new people I've met, I've kind of, I mean, it's like almost like the cosplay community. Most of them are neurodivergent. There's like
Yeah.
a lot of people have like ADHD, autism, all that stuff. And so there's kind of this community of just being a little bit weird, for lack of a better term. And it's just kind of like queer in the weird way. And although a lot of us are queer as well, but it's kind of like that environment of like, oh, they have this, okay, they've got that, okay, I've got schizoaffective disorder, okay, Kit has schizoaffective disorder. And it's kind of like you just kind of work with everyone's issues, and it's okay. And I think it's because I'm in that environment that I'm able to like thrive in it, if that makes sense, because I don't find success with normies, for lack of a better
Yeah.
term. Like, just
I love that.
everyday, yeah, everyday people I can't relate to, I can't communicate with. They think I'm weird. They don't want to be around me, and so I do struggle a lot with that kind of thing. Like, we'll talk about dating at some point, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I struggle a lot with dating because of that. So that was kind of how I kept people, and I really have just kept like my friends at college, and then I cosplay buddies, and that's just my whole support friends. And then of course the people I've met through advocacy. I do want to make that clear.
Yeah.
Yes, the
What
people
the
I've,
heck?
yeah. I'm like trying to remember like people outside of advocacy, but also people at advocacy is
Yeah.
still a thing. Yeah, but we were talking about outside of advocacy. That's why. So yeah.
So here's a question that I love to ask people who still have some of their friendships from before they were diagnosed. I found this really interesting. When I was diagnosed, I had people. So you get diagnosed, right? And you want to go tell people, you're like, because it's hard and you're worried you're going to lose friends and stuff like that. And I remember going to tell some of my friends, my close friends who I am still friends with. And I was like super nervous about it. I was like, yeah, so I got this diagnosis of schizophrenia. And I waited and I was so shocked. Most of them were like, yeah, Kody, we're all pretty aware. Like they all knew because it was obvious to the outside person. It was harder for me because I had a lack of insight. But I always ask if that happened to other advocates. So is that something that you experienced? Because you went through your psychotic break, you knew your cosplay friends. So when you told them that, were they all like shocked, or were they like, yeah, Kit, of course you have schizoaffective disorder?
So when it came to the schizoaffective part, it's kind of like because like my voices were primarily internal, I would only be communicating with them internally. So I wouldn't necessarily be
Gotcha.
talking out loud. And so when I was communicating with the voices, people wouldn't really see me do it. They might see me talk under my breath sometimes, but it wasn't anything too wild. But when I told them that, they were like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense. I mean, you did kind of go to Japan. It's gonna get like you did do all this stuff because remember, I don't have insight into my mania and hypomania, so
Yeah.
I more get from my friends. Oh yeah, Kate, you were totally hypomanic. Yeah, you were
Yeah.
totally hypomanic doing that. And I'm like, why didn't you tell me? And then they say, we told you, but you were like, I'm not actually hypomanic. Yeah, it
Same. Yeah, people
yeah.
I always ask that too. I'm like, "Why didn't you say anything?" They're like, "Oh, we did." Like, you just
Yeah.
you weren't able to understand, and I was like, "Ah, good. Good to know."
Yeah, I
Uh,
never believe I'm hypomanic when I'm hypomanic ever. Like, people like, you're doing this, you're doing that. There's all these signs, and I'm like, I'm not. You guys are lying to me.
it's definitely, like, interesting, though. So part of this also is you talked about how you don't have relationships with, and I'm gonna use your words here, a lot of normies. And so part of that I think I can relate to, because I think that the people in my life who weren't willing to stick around after my diagnosis were kind of the people who either haven't experienced, they had no family experience of mental illness, you know. It was people who couldn't understand because they didn't want to or they weren't willing to. And the people who stuck in my life were the people who had been through it themselves, or they had a family member struggling, or you know, they just understood because they were neurodivergent in some other way. So my other question I always ask is, did you lose friends? Did you lose, like, I lost some friends that didn't want to associate with me, family members, stuff like that. Is that something you dealt with in your experience, or are the people that you hung out with kind of the only ones that you were hanging out with prior to your diagnosis?
Oh no, when I had my psychotic break, I was living with my friends, friends that I'd met years ago online through an online game called Clash of Clans.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I met my roommate through Clash of Clans,
Yeah.
and we'd been friends for many years, through the game and all that stuff. And when I had my psychotic break and did everything I did, so I struggled a lot with negative symptoms. So I didn't want to go out with people, like go out and hang out with people. So asociality. Then I had no motivation to like do chores or tasks or anything. So I had the avolition. And that really wrecked everything. And so when I came out on the other side of my psychotic break and had my diagnosis then of bipolar 1 with psychotic features, not quite schizoaffective, um, I told them. And they sat me down and they're like, "You're gonna have to leave." And
Yeah.
then there was a resulting falling out from that, and I no longer speak with them, so I lost all of them, and all of them meant a lot to me too. That was the really hard part, is like I lost really close friends over what happened in my episode. And I do feel bad about some of it, but also it's like it wasn't it was the disorder. It wasn't my fault that I couldn't do those things. And it's really frustrating to be like losing people for stuff that technically wasn't my fault, but I still take responsibility for the things I did. So, yeah, it's complicated.
That's a huge thing that I always talk about is, and in addition to, you know, my negative symptoms, my cognitive symptoms, so like you said, issues with cleaning, issues with motivation, stuff like that. I also, because of my addiction, I was really horrible to some people. I took advantage of people. I borrowed money that I couldn't pay back for years. And so I do understand certain people who didn't want to be a part of my life anymore. And it's frustrating because, like you said, I acknowledge that I did those things and I apologize for them. Uh, and it's frustrating because at the end of the day, I know that me, who I am as a person, who I am now with medication, would never do that to the people in my life. And I do understand some of them for not wanting to be a part of my life anymore. But I think that doesn't make it easier, you know? If anything, I think it makes it harder because it's like we both know that given any circumstance, we would never do that to these people, especially like you said, one of your closest friends. I have family members who don't talk to me anymore. I have friends that I literally went to elementary, middle school, and high school with who didn't want to be a part of my life after my diagnosis. And I, whenever I get questions about that, I always tell advocates and peers that one, it's okay if people don't want to be a part of your life. It's also okay if you don't want certain people to be a part of your life. And for me, those were the people who they tried to stick around, but they weren't willing to learn about my diagnosis. They weren't willing to accommodate me. They weren't willing to be advocates for me or try to help me live a more functional life. So you make friends that I think will understand your story. You got to be willing to lose friendships, build new friendships, and that can be hard when you're struggling with a diagnosis and struggling with a mental illness. So, in order to help you guys navigate new friendships, me and Kit came up with a list of green flags for peers. And I kind of want to extend this conversation because we've been talking not only about peers, but friends, you know, like relationships outside of peer support, but for the conversation we're having, we're going to have it in the context of like green flags for peers. So Kit and I both made a list of 3 different green flags for peers, and I'm going to let Kit start it off, and we're going to list all 3 of these, and let us know in the comments whether you're watching or listening what you guys think of this, and if there's any green flags you would include.
So, my first green flag is that the person I'm friends with, that I'm hanging out with, they need to be able to listen to what I'm saying to them that has to do with my illness and not freak out about it. Because I feel like with our conditions, they're very serious. There's a lot of heavy, heavy stuff, and it can be really scary sometimes. And so having someone that can listen to me talk about what I'm going through and not like widen their eyes and go, "Oh my goodness, this is not good," is really valuable to me. And so that's something I look for in people is like when I talk about my symptoms, when I talk about my illness, how do they react? And if they react pretty chill and they're like, "Okay, how does that affect you? How can I help you?" Or do you just want me to listen? Then that's a green flag for sure.
I love that example too because it, like you said, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, that can all be super heavy, and there can be a lot of things that can seem really shocking or like stories that you're going to hear that are going to be kind of intense. So I think being able to react to that in a calm way not only gives people like us more comfort, but it also helps kind of normalize like, hey, this is just a part of my life and I'm working through it and things like this happen. I love that example actually.
So what would you say is one of your green flags?
So my first green flag was someone who listens as much as they speak and vice versa. I want someone who shares their life with me because I tend to share a lot about what I'm going through. And I feel like I get more out of conversations if I can hear from the other person and what they're going through and how their life is being affected by either their illness or something else traumatic going on. That to me gives me comfort because it reminds me that other people are struggling, which is why I got into peer support. It makes me remember that like I'm not alone in this journey. So as much as I love being able to trauma dump on people, I also want to be able to hear their experiences and hear their stories. So I've been in like situations with peers where I'm sharing a lot and they're either hesitant to share or they, they might be newer in their recovery and not open to share as much, and I don't feel like I get as much out of that. I don't feel like it's as beneficial for me as a person in recovery. So that's my first one. So what would be your second one then?
So my second green flag would be that someone is interested enough to do research. So I would absolutely love it when I meet people if I say, "Hey, I've got schizoaffective disorder," and I hear that they've gone home and they've Googled it. They've tried to learn about it a little bit. I'm not saying they need to do a PubMed deep dive, but just going on to Google and reading some Healthline articles would be really awesome. And I've had people do that, and it's like a major green flag for me because I get so excited because I'm like, wait, you actually looked it up? You actually learned about it? What did you learn? What did you find? Let's talk about it. And it's usually a pretty good conversation starter. And I wouldn't say that every single person in my life has done this, but there's been a few that have been like, hey, I've read a little bit about this and I kind of understand it more. And I think that is like a really cool thing when it happens. And when it does happen, I'm like, oh, this person is a keeper.
I love that because to me it just shows they care, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
someone putting in that little extra effort. Like you said, they don't have to like publish an entire paper about schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder, but even a simple Google search shows like they cared enough to take a minute out of their day to look into it. And I think that really that's a like ultra green flag. Someone who's willing to put time in to accommodate you. And to me, that's accommodating. Like they want to know more, they want to know how to help you. That's huge, especially because if someone has to look it up or Google it, I feel like that means they probably don't know a lot about it. And a lot of people in that circumstance, I think, would just choose to continue not knowing about it and like maybe learn by what you tell them or explain to them. But I love the extra effort of someone being like, I want to learn more and I want to know how to help.
So, what's your next green flag, Cody?
So my second one is outside interest similarities. So like interests that are outside of just our illness. So like I love talking with someone about what I've been through, what they've been through, but I also want to have stuff in common with the person like outside of just our diagnosis. I want to be able to talk to them about I can't claim to be as much of a nerd or a geek as Kit here, but I have my things. I love comic books. I used to be really into Magic the Gathering, stuff like that. So, like anything outside of that, Marvel movies, DC movies, video games is a big one for me.
Yes,
If
yes.
you can talk to me about video games, especially like open world games like Skyrim, Fallout, you'll have a friend for life because I will talk your ear off nonstop. So, having similarities outside of just our diagnosis is huge. And I think this is something I didn't realize until I started doing advocacy and doing more peer support, because there was a while where I was just becoming friends with people because of their diagnosis, which is fine. I still talk to a lot of those people, but it was hard to build a really solid connection when we had nothing else in common, you know? So I think that can be really important for not only, finding really compatible peers, but also for building new relationships.
Having interests outside of the illness also kind of helps you to not focus on the illness as much. It's almost like it's a breath of fresh air. And so you know that with those people, you can talk about the illness, yes, when it's affecting you, but you also know you can do something totally different, which actually leads a lot into my next green flag. And it's that I do lots of things not related to mental health with my peers. So I do my hobbies, I do my cosplay, I do my 18th century historical reenacting, I do all of that stuff. And it's because of that that I know that I have good people because they're not focused on my diagnosis and I'm not constantly focused on my diagnosis. And I think that's really valuable.
And like you had just said too, like being able to do stuff outside of just talking about your illness also allows a separation from your diet. Like it's hard for us because we are mental health advocates. We are, schizophrenia spectrum disorder advocates. So like we already spend so much of our time and
Yes.
energy on this illness, which I love what we do. I love what I do. I love speaking and all of this, but it can be so draining to constantly have to think about this lifelong illness that we struggle with. So um I really enjoy being able to meet with people and be able to travel or go visit places, or I play a lot of online games with people. That's my big thing with I'll meet advocates, we become friends. Suddenly we're just playing Fortnite. So
Yeah, I played Minecraft with a fellow advocate.
yeah, there you go. And like
Yep.
it's stuff like that I think is just it's so nice to like be with people who get it. But not have to always talk about it. So that's an amazing one.
So finish us off, Kody. What's your third one?
The third one for me is boundary setting, not just on the side of me, the patient and peer, but on the side of the other person too. And part of the reason I bring this up is I am a trauma dumper. Like, like the minute you meet me, you learn so much about me, and not all of it is great. A lot of it is it's a lot. That's all I can really say about it. I really want to hear from the person that I'm sharing stories with. If there's ever anything that makes them uncomfortable, or if there's ever a topic that they don't want to discuss. And the only way that I can know those things is if people set their own personal boundaries. And I think this is important for us to hear too as peers. I didn't do this early on, and I put myself in really unsafe situations where certain things that may have triggered symptoms for me. I didn't want to say no because I didn't want to inconvenience the peer that I was, building a relationship with, or the peer that I was like building a really solid friendship with. But I realized like that doesn't benefit me. It doesn't benefit them. So try to make sure that you're being really clear with people that are new in your life with, with or without their own diagnosis, what makes you comfortable and what you're willing to talk about. And don't feel like you have to answer every question or meet the energy of everything that's going on. Like you can have your own boundaries. You can still be able to be peers and talk about really difficult things while maintaining, your own mental health and mental well-being as well.
Yeah, because it's important to say that if you're talking with somebody who also struggles with severe mental health issues and they're telling you all of the details about their life that they're comfortable sharing, it's okay if you're not comfortable sharing as much back.
Exactly. Yep. So those are just some of the green flags that we wanted to share with you guys. I would love to hear what other people see for green flags and peers, and maybe even like what are some green flags you have for new friendships after your diagnosis? Because, like we discussed, that can be a really difficult thing for people newly diagnosed, is building and maintaining healthy relationships. And I don't know about you, Kit, but for me, like having those relationships is part of what kept me going, because I isolated so much early on. I was very alone. And it's like, yes, I have my wife. She's amazing. I have my mom. She understands what I've been through because she's been through it. But I didn't have like friendships. I didn't have people to go to. I didn't have activities I could do. I like my life was just kind of miserable before I started being able to meet people who had either been through a diagnosis like mine or understood what it was like to be a recovering addict or someone who had been to jail or prison. Like for me, that was huge because it reminded me that like my life, although was very bad at that point, there was a lot of negative things going on. That I wasn't alone, and a lot of people have not only been through it, but gotten through to the other side and kind of been able to, have success rebuilding their lives. And I needed to see that, and I needed to know that was possible.
Yeah, when I was recovering, when I moved back from New York City to North Carolina after I had my psychotic break, my friends were like they were there. They were actually happy I was back because most of them were in North Carolina. And so we started doing things together. We started doing cons together, and it was like yes, I was recovering and I was doing my DBT classes and I was doing all these things to get my crap together basically. But in the middle of that, I had these events that I did my friends with, whether it was like a crafting party or a little photo shoot get together or an actual convention that we would go to. Like we went to a big convention in DC right before COVID hit, and it was some of the best fun I've ever had. But during COVID, we still kept up and talked, and like I really think that throughout my recovery, and of course recovery is still happening, but in my early recovery, I I feel like they were instrumental in giving me something that was something to look forward to and engage with that wasn't the heavy stuff I was dealing with while I was trying to get my life together.
Yeah, I love that. And so, my note for anyone listening is if you feel alone, please reach out because there are so many groups out there. And it doesn't even have to be peer support. Find an interest that you like Kit did. If you have something that you want to pursue as a hobby, you might find really good friends through that hobby. You might even find people with similar diagnoses doing that thing that you're interested in. So find a community, and I will talk all day, every day about like organizations like NAMI, in-person peer support groups, online peer support groups. But find your community, whatever that is, whatever that looks like. It can be different for everyone, and I think it should be. I think it should be what works for you. I think it should be what you are comfortable with and what gets you back around people. Right? Like just get you out of the house, get you around people, keep you from isolating. That's what we all need, and unfortunately a lot of us early on don't have that, and there are some people well into their journeys who haven't found their community yet. So that's always my PSA for these types of episodes, is to remind you that there is someone out there who can understand what you're going through and would even be willing to sit down and learn about your journey through this diagnosis. I'm going to let Kit end the episode today. If there's any other tidbits or information or insights onto peer support that you have for the audience.
Yeah, kind of amplifying what you said about trying to seek out people through common interests. One of the biggest ways I was able to gain peers was by going to things, by doing things, and by going to do the things, I met people that were also doing the thing. Like, for example, I have one of my closest friends I met through my 18th century historical reenacting. We just really hit it off, and he's a totally, like, mostly neurotypical person, but he's become, like, one of my closest friends, and he listens to all my things, and he's got the green flags. So it's just kind of wild to me how hobbies really help. And I think a lot of people are not, they're kind of sitting on the fact that hobbies could get you somewhere, whether it's like a knitting club, a crochet club. Um, it doesn't have to be like some fancy Comic Con or anything. You can just go to like a local meetup for something. And Facebook is a great way to figure out meetups for places in your community. So it's like seek out that stuff. And that's really what I want to emphasize. And I want to emphasize it because that's what I did and that's what worked for me.
I actually also want to follow up with that. My wife, who is on the autism spectrum, she actually made friends online through a Facebook Puggle group. So one of my dogs is a Puggle, and she was able to find other people who owned Puggles. She even found a page on Facebook that's like it's like autistic puggle owners or something, like very like how specific and niche, but like that
Oh
was
my
out
goodness.
there, which was crazy to me. But I think that also goes to show like find people outside of just your space, like be willing to try new things and venture out. And I think you'll be shocked with the amount of people out there who can not only identify with what you've been through, but also have similar interests, which is so rewarding.
All right, guys, that's our episode. And if you like what you heard, give us a rating on whatever app you are listening on, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you're on YouTube, do like the video. And if you have any guest ideas, any topic ideas, do reach out to us on social media. We are Schiz and Giggles on Instagram and TikTok, and we are also schizandgiggles@gmail.com. So do shoot us an email, shoot us a message, and we'll get to it and take everything about what y'all are saying and figure out what we're going to do for future episodes, because we want to make episodes about what you guys want to hear.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for listening. And Kit, as always,
Guys, remember, the brain is a minefield and we brought flip-flops.